From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? It's good to be back with you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Doing great, Steve. It's always look forward to having our discussions. So looking forward to this. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. We're getting up there in our episodes too, approaching episode 200, which is really cool. And we think both enjoy being able to share these experiences and doing these one-on-one conversations, even though we do value our guests. So let us know what you think about this one, and also let us know out there if you want to be a guest. We're open to that, and we want to get started too by talking about a comment that we received. We're a little bit delayed in getting back to the viewer on YouTube, James Bond, LB7SE. He asked about best programming practices, and I think that there's a lot of ways that we could possibly answer that. And so we're going to put a call out to this viewer and ask him for if he'd like to be a guest, and if you want to join us on a show and ask this question and have dialogue, or if you want to provide some more detail, let us know. But I think this could be a good topic in the future, and we appreciate you reaching out and also sharing, both viewing our shows and sharing your thoughts. So, in terms of today, we had come up with a discussion point, which I think a lot of people will be able to relate to, and that's existing either campus or enterprise standards. I think that these are always good to have, because we always think about the idea that somebody needs to be comfortable in going from system to system and not have to worry about how to operate each one individually, but more so having consistency across the functionality and the operation of the systems, regardless of what equipment is in there or functionality. But standards are tricky because standards have to be appropriate to the environment, and they also need to be maintained. And so, James, you're more on that side of the fence. Normally, when we would get involved with standards, we'd be handed something that says this is what we need the user interface to look like, or this is a similar system that we want this project to be patterned off of. What's your experience with existing standards, and when have you seen them be beneficial, and what are some gotchas maybe?
So I'll tackle the beneficial part first. Because I'm a big component for being standard. And that's one thing in the AV industry I've always have been tooting about, that there's not proper standard. Because I come from the IT world where you have your standards, and AV, you have standard, just pick the one you want to do. That's not a true standard. Um, so the benefit is, if you have your standard code, it allows you to easily deploy rooms. So I mean, look at me, I'm in higher ed. I know everyone's like, "Oh, winter break and summer break, you guys must be slow, or you folks must be slow, because school's not going on." No, that's when we are doing our projects. We're doing our upgrades, we're doing our changes, and because classes rooms are not being used. So we're actually busy during those breaks, as you hear them in higher ed. Um, and then during the semester, it's normally break fix and a couple projects here and there. So if you have a standard code base and a standard of how your code feels and operates, it allows you to deploy it quickly in tight windows that you might only have 2 weeks to get a couple rooms up and running. Uh, but if you have that standard code, you don't need to worry about, okay, working out the bugs, because you already did that. And you already built your standard. The bugs are already worked out. You just deployed the code. You might have to do a couple, tweaking here and there for each room. Each room is going to be a little unique, the QSIC and things like that, to a point. You do have your cookie cutters as well. So that's the pro of standardization. The drawback is, as you said, some rooms are unique. Your standard may not fit those, or your standard might be no longer fitting what the users need to do in the space. Or, if you work on a major university campus, um, and you're looking at different schools per that campus, each school is going to have a different requirement. So, like, I mean, look at my environment. I'm at the medical school. Our code was based off of what main campus was doing. The main campus's code is great for what main campus does. Our environment is different. Our classes are different. Our structures are different. How we do things are different in our environment. So taking that standard, we actually have learned that there are parts of that code that does not make sense or actually is detrimental to our environment because it doesn't fit of how we work. So we have made changes to that standard to build our standard.
Yeah, I think all of that is really, really valuable insight, and it gives us a lot to think about because, to your point, there are many times where projects need to be done quickly and efficiently, and there's really no time to reinvent the wheel. And also there needs to be consistency, especially if you're working with different programmers or vendors, and you can't have each room look very different and have different features in operation. It's going to be so jarring to the user, and not only that is think it's going to it's going to take away confidence from the people that are owning those rooms. Um, the flip side of it is that I think a standard is something that needs to be taken seriously and needs to be its own project and needs to be looked at as something that is really its own, almost like a strategic plan where you do one and you set an expiration date and you have to do another one, or you have to revisit it every so many years and possibly challenge it and ensure that it's meeting your needs. Now, the hard part about that, and this is where I think a lot of people or a lot of organizations get stuck, is that if you are going to make changes, that means you have to make changes to all of the systems that are previously deployed, which can be a big undertaking. So it becomes a serious situation. Now, what I've experienced in these cases is that, like you said, sometimes a standard no longer meets the needs or makes sense, or it appears dated, or you try to shoehorn new equipment into a standard that's built around older equipment that has different operation. And I can only imagine if somebody is still using a standard for a hardware codec and they're trying to make it work with Zoom, that could be pretty significant. So I mean that's one example of that. But I it's such an important thing to look at, and I think a standard can backfire if it's not maintained.
Yes, it can definitely backfire, both ways, being maintained or even not being maintained. Like, yeah, if you're not maintaining your standard and, you're bringing the wild, wild west in, and just putting whatever equipment in and trying to get code on there, then you don't have a standard. Um, Standard is not just on your code, but, on the equipment you use, the user experience, all that is standardized. If it's not standard across the whole system, then you don't have a true standard. But also, if you are so dead set on your standard, going, "No, this is our standard," then you're actually doing a detrimental to your customers if you need to pivot and make changes because the need of your users have changed. So even being so dead set on, okay, this is our standard, this is what we're doing it this way, does not always mean it's the right way. Currently, the way I like to kind of do my standard is I always kind of look at it each time I'm deploying a new room or even an update. If I'm deploying an update or I'm deploying a new room, how much of that standard code base we have, how much of it did we have to change? If we had to change nothing, great. Standard's still fine. If I had to change a good 20, 30% of that code, then I need to revisit my standard. Because to me, it's like, okay, the standard is not meeting it. And do I need to update or change my standard now? And then like you said, you run into this thing is, okay, now are you deploying that across your university? And that is a big undertaking. So there is a balancing act. Like, okay, we do need to meet the future needs of our users, but we can't, upgrade 200 classrooms in a summer. It just you can't do it financially and
Hmm.
stuff. And yeah, there might be schools who are like, oh, we could do that. Great for you. Majority of us can't. Either we don't have the resources or we don't have the funding. Really, it comes down to funding. You can always find people, even if you get outside contractors and stuff, you can find those people. It's the funding to get the rooms to upgrade. So you can't upgrade across the board. So you got to try to balance your standard to meet the new needs of your users while also adhering to what you used to do so you don't break any of your current rooms until they can
Right.
be updated.
That's the tricky part right there, because I think because you're always going to find yourself in a transitional state, and it seems like you probably can't vary too far from what is existing, and how do you do that, or is there enough value that's provided when you're making that adjustment? um, you know, I, I, I realize where the challenge is, and I think it's one of those things that is an ongoing, inherent thing in what we do, and especially now where we're talking a lot of times, not just about tens of rooms, but hundreds of rooms, if not more, and you really have to have a mechanism to be able to um, keep consistency while um, progressing, so I'm curious if our audience has experience with this, that they'd be willing to share what has worked and what hasn't. Please reach out to us and let us know. And if you'd like to talk about this on a show, we'd really like to have specific examples. And we're all about trying to share ideas with others to help programmers succeed. Um, One thing that I can say that my company has done is, we've built a deployable standard code base that has options built within it, but you have to buy into that, and it's something that, again, if you're not starting from scratch, it's hard to go to something like that when you have existing systems in place, because it does, to your point before, it is heavily dependent not just on the user interface and the code, but on the hardware, because it supports
Yeah.
a certain selection of hardware.
Yeah. And that's one thing I was doing back east. I have not done that here yet. I'm a little more removed from the programming side, but I was building, my standard base code. And the way I was building it was I was making it modular. So like, okay, this hardware, we changed out our displays. Okay, all I had to do was pull out that display module, put a new, even if I had to make a custom module, put a new one in, but the base code was still the same. It was just, you're pulling out that feature. Does um r- lead into the question of, do you throw everything in there in the kitchen sink and then you bloat your program? I know we talked
Hmm.
about that before, or do you go very lean and, just what you need to do, and then you have no flexibility if you say you can no longer get product A and you had to go to product D, and now you need to update your code completely. So it's definitely a balancing act. But yeah, I like to try to build my code a little more module based, so that allows that, okay, I'm pulling this display out, but everything else is the same. Okay, just pull the display module out, write a new one, and integrate it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, and part of that also allows you to dynamically change the user interface too to bring up the functions or features or custom um, buttons that are required that match up with the devices or the functionality that you're providing. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear what listeners have experienced, and if you can shed some light on this, please do. You can reach out to us about being on the show. You could also find us on LinkedIn in our Ask the Programmer community, our LinkedIn group. So please join us there. James, how can people get in touch with you and talk more about this topic and know what you're up to?
Again, if you're trying to keep up with what I'm doing, let me know how you do it, because I don't even keep up with what I'm doing all the time. Google me, you'll find me. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on X at AB_James King, LinkedIn, our LinkedIn community. Again, Google me, you'll find me.
Absolutely, and yeah, I kind of feel the same way. We need to be more involved in LinkedIn, and we will be as we're starting this new year in 2025. But LinkedIn seems to be a real meeting place for AV folks these days. So check that out. And as James mentioned, Blue Sky is starting to also attract attention as and some people have. Moved away from Twitter. So, but we're on both, and you can find me on social media at Steve Greenblatt. You can find my company, which is a supporter of this show, at controlconcepts.net. We help programmers by building the modules, drivers, and plugins needed to either interface with different equipment or provide added features and functionality for your systems. So reach out to us and let us know what we can do for you and where we should be focusing our attention. Um, as James mentioned, we'd like to engage with you on LinkedIn. But if you have been keeping up with this on YouTube, you can also catch us on your favorite podcast player in the audio version. And if you're listening on audio, you can catch us on YouTube. And as one of our viewers on YouTube commented, we'd like to receive your thoughts and please reach out to us, and we'll be more diligent about getting back to you and using your comments as a feeder for a future episode. And until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.